Good day, selamat datang and welcome to the virtual colloquium by Institute of Teacher Education, International Languages Campus, or better known as IPG-KBA, with the theme Humanizing Teaching and Learning, the Dynamics of Language Education in the Waves of Global Change. I'm Hakima, your moderator for today's session. Welcome to the 12th session of Virtual Colloquium, and I hope you will stay tuned till the end of this session. Today, we have a speaker from the Southeast Asia, but his heart is always close to Malaysia. Our speaker has been to Kuala Lumpur in 2019 as an MTCP IPG-KBA participant. However, before we get to know him, let me lay out a few housekeeping matters. First, everyone who attends today's webinar series will be given an e-certificate after each session. Therefore, don't forget to register yourself and make sure to type accurate email address. The registration link is pinned at the bottom of this YouTube channel. Next, there is no question for today's presentation because it is recorded. However, you can always post your questions later. Hopefully, the speaker will be able to answer your questions when he reads it. And finally, we would like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Saprolla Deporos. Previously served the Ministry of Education from 2008 up to 2015 in Davao City. He has vast experience as the principal of Wisdom Islamic School and Public Government Schools, all are situated in Davao City, the Philippines. He is currently pursuing his PhD in Educational Administration in Bandung, Indonesia. His affiliation is impressive too. Mr. Deporos is the president of International Student Association in his university, and he also is the president of the Filipino student community in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, please welcome Mr. Saprolla Deporos.
Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Good afternoon to everyone from Bandung, Indonesia. And allow me to greet you the greetings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. I hope that everyone is okay today amidst this pandemic. I know that everybody is having a hard time, like having this kind of health crisis that we have. But inshallah, may this humble presentation of mine can support our prior knowledge to be awakened again and strengthen our capacity to deliver more and to be part of the best change of our society or institution. Of course, we are doing this one for us to be able to deliver any knowledge that our society or our institution can be uplifted and developed. So today we are going to discuss the topic aligned with the title, Empowering Language Teacher Through Teaching and Learning. So our mantra for today is an empowered teacher believe in himself or herself. So basically our topic today will be how to empower language teacher through teaching and learning. So whether you are teaching Arabic language, Indonesian, Malaysian language, English, Arabic, Filipino language, whatever languages that you are teaching, this presentation is for everyone. So being part of the academe as teacher and as part of administrators of our school, which is Wisdom Islamic School, located in Davao City, Philippines, one of the missing parts that I observe to our teachers today, even though they are very good, they are very eloquent, for example, of their craft, but then the problem is they have this missing part, which is empowerment. We need to empower ourselves to empower others. So we as teachers, our children, our students, our pupils, for example, they need us. So with that, I think these things are already enough for us, or the reason for us to be empowered. So I hope that everybody are okay today because we are going to tackle the very important thing that might actually help ourselves as a teacher, as a professional teachers. How are we going to make our class, how are we going to make our lesson more appropriate to our students or clientele. So the coverage of this presentation, number one, we have, of course, brief self-introduction. I'm going to introduce myself to each and everyone. And then photos of my workplace. Because before I was a teacher in a public school, which is under the government, of course. We are going to give you some photos of my old photos from my previous school and my present school, which I am teaching today. So some photos also when I was part of the MTCP 2019 before the pandemic. That was, if I'm not mistaken, the last week of August and the first week of mid of August until the first week of September 2019. And then we're going to talk also the general issue pertaining to the topic. And then we are going to move on to the lesson proper. And then I'm going to give you a basic example in line with the topic that I am going to emphasize or share to each and every one of you. I know that this topic is not that new to everyone. Maybe we just have to make it properly understood, because these terminologies, these pedagogy terminologies are sometimes misunderstood and misused by some of the teachers. Even me myself, before, I have some confusion with these pedagogical terminologies. And then we're going to give, of course, after example, we're going to conclude, and then we're going to give you a question and answer portion for us to be able to have at least a interaction. And then that's all the coverage for my presentation this afternoon. So of course, my name is Saprolla Rollie C, Deporos. I am a licensed professional teacher. I am a PhD candidate. I am actually studying at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, or we called it the University Education in Indonesia, located in Bandung, West Java. I am taking educational administration, and in terms of working, I am working at Wisdom Islamic School. I am their school principal since 2016 up to the present. Before I am part of Wisdom Islamic School, I was actually a former public school teacher. I am teaching in Don Juan de la Cruz Central Elementary School, located in Turil District, Davao City, Philippines. And of course, after, if I'm not mistaken, after 5 years, I moved to another public elementary school, which is in Santana District in Zonta Elementary School. So basically, I was a public school teacher from 2008 up to 2016, and then from 2016 and until now, I'm a part of Wisdom Islamic School as their principal or part of the administrators. And I graduated my bachelor's degree in University of Southeastern Philippines. And then after that one, this is actually in Davao City. And after that, I passed the licensure examination for teacher. That was 2008. And then a year after, I was able to, get a scholarship program offered by University of Brunei Darussalam. And then after that, I took my master's degree in Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, or Muhammadiyah Surakarta University. That was 2016, if I'm not mistaken, 2016. Because during the time that I am studying, during the time that I am, teaching in public school, I did a, what do you call this one? A study leave. I was able to, study abroad while I am connected in the government. So I finished my master's degree, majoring educational administration in Indonesia also. After that, I took Dharma Siswa. It's a 1-year course. It's not it's a non-degree course. We are just studying the culture and language of Indonesia, and that was 1 year program. And then after that, I took my PhD in Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. This university that I am actually being part of this university right now. And then I had an exchange student program in Yogyakarta State University, still in Indonesia. But there are some program that is funded by Malaysian government that I actually joined before the MTCP 2019. I joined MGPS Batch 5, which is Mahathir Global Peace School 2017. That was a collaboration of Indonesia and Malaysian government. And then the venue of that, like almost 2 weeks international conference was in Indonesia. That was in Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta University. So basically, that's the basic information of myself. Okay, these are the photos that I've worked with then and now. So before, if you're going to see in your screen, in the right side, these are the photos taken in Wisdom Islamic School, and the left side are photos taken in Don Juan de la Cruz Central Elementary School, and of course in Zonta Elementary School. So I am not an English major teacher actually, but an Arabic language teacher. So basically, before, when I was in Brunei Darussalam, I was able to teach Arabic language in Jirudung Arabic School. That was part of my internship. It's a 5 months teaching experience that I had when I was in Brunei Darussalam. In fact, I taught also what do you call this one, in Indonesia before, in Solo or in Surakarta, an Arabic language also in Muhammadiyah Surakarta University in PESMA, or we called it Pesantren Mahasiswa. So basically, I teach Arabic language more than English language. And then, although I am more into Arabic language, but I also teach English language, especially now in Indonesia. I have this kind of tutorial to some college students, and it's a personal program. It's a personal offering English speaking class to my friends and other students who need assistance to improve their speaking skills. So basically, if you see my education, excuse me, my work background, I am more into, as what I've said, Arabic language, but I also teach English language for speaking skills, something like that. So basically, I am more into other subjects in terms of teaching. But let's go for the topic that we are going to discuss today. So these are the what do you call this one? The photos, taken 2019. We had MTCP 2019 held at IPG KBA. The program inspired us to be empowered as an educator because our neighboring countries like Malaysia did their job, well in terms of education, in terms of providing quality education to their nation. If you see, these photos was actually taken last 2019, as what I've said, from several schools and some universities also. I was, realized the importance of education, because if you see our neighboring countries like Malaysia, they were able to give quality education to their students. So I'm a little bit envious with that, because if Malaysian government can do this one, why the Philippines cannot do this? So basically, these are one of the inspiration. That's why I am pursuing my PhD, for me to be able to impart some knowledge to my constituents way back in the Philippines. So first thing that we're going to talk is how to empower oneself. An empowered teacher knows what is his passion, what is his direction. He knows what to do, and he knows when to make something, and he knows his craft. This is one of the few descriptions of empowered individual. So basically, as teachers, when we accept our responsibilities as educators, we know we need to learn. Self-esteem is necessary. That's why because you have the dignity, you have the high morale and confidence of yourself. Basically, you have to believe in yourself that you can do more, you can provide more, and these can only be taken when you know what you are doing. There's a lot of factors, of course, when you empowered yourself. For example, if you see these quotes, the strongest factor for success is when self-esteem, believing, the strongest factor for success is self-esteem, believing you can do, and believing you deserve it, and believing you'll get it. So you have to build your self-esteem. So of course, there's a lot of factors to empower ourselves, but to be specific, one of the factors is knowledge. You have to be knowledgeable of your whatever things that you are doing, especially we as language teacher, we have to know what we are doing. If we have adequate knowledge of our craft, for example, we have satisfactory information of something, for example, our craft and profession, then that is the best step to gain confidence. We have to remember that not all teachers have this personality. Not all teachers have a very good, like strong personality that can, able to face whatever circumstances that he may face, along the way in his journey as a teacher or as an educator. So from now on, you have to try and be one of those beneficial teachers that needed by your community. So basically, we have to empower ourselves through knowledge. Knowledge is power. That is really true. We need it because they need it. If you're going to see the faces of these children, why teachers must be empowered through knowledge? Because if you see these children, they are dependent to us. So how can we, be able to educate them if we are not empowered through education? So that's why knowledge is the main reason why we want to teach. Okay? Without knowledge, of course, teaching is not possible. You cannot teach anything if you don't have adequate knowledge. So we need to acquire good thoughts, good or enough information, enough experiences, and theoretical understanding in any subject that we are focusing on, although we are focusing on language subject here. So therefore, you need to know your craft as a teacher. You need to know your craft, your profession. You need to be skillful enough so that you can show your full potential and make the clienteles or make your students or make your learners, benefit from you. According to Abdul Kalam, learning gives creativity. Okay, creativity leads to thinking. Thinking provides knowledge, and knowledge makes you great. So what do you mean by that? You have to learn to create. Okay, because when you create, you are thinking, and when you are thinking, you want to provide something, right? So, and when you provide something, you make yourself great and you make other people great. Therefore, knowledge is an essential factor to be a good educator. That's why I told you earlier that one of the factors for you to be able to be empowered, educator is to have an adequate knowledge. Now, there are some, like issues in terms of teaching language. There are some glitches faced by teachers in teaching language. For example, in English or Arabic, there is a disturbed environment of the class. For example, lack of teaching resources. For example, a large number of students in the classroom, incorrect syllabus to teach. For example, language barrier. We have this one, especially, for example, for me, when I'm teaching English and Arabic language when I was in Indonesia, we have, like this language barrier. And then limited time for teaching. I also experienced this one when I was in the public school. And then we have students' passiveness. Some students are just like waiting, or whatever, like spoon feeding, if we are going to say that way. Students are bored and not interested in learning. And then we have also classroom management problems. So, disturbed environment of the class. Sometimes this kind of stuff. Why is it that students are disturbed, inside of the class? There's a lot of reasons. For example, like maybe the teacher have, this kind of problem in terms of teaching resources that makes the students, bored, for example. Or maybe a large number of students. I remember before when I was in the Don Juan Central Elementary School, I remember we have, if I'm not mistaken, 1:50. Because I'm teaching grade 6. So, they are the higher grades in elementary level. So, one teacher equivalent to 50 students or more. Not more than 55 though. But these numbers of students while you are teaching inside the class, it's really, really huge. So, that's why we cannot, sometimes we cannot avoid that our students are disturbed because of these numbers, huge numbers of students in the classroom. And sometimes, for example, we can call this one like teaching by chance, or you were forced to teach this specific subject even though it's not your field because you are lack of teachers in your institution. So limited time for teaching also. Let's go back first, the incorrect syllabus to teach. there are some teachers who were given loads, okay, teaching loads, which even though it's not their strength, it's not their major. So because we have lack of teachers, for example, in our school, so the principal or administrator will give you the task to teach to your students or pupils, for example, or learners, for example, even though you have a hard time with it. So that's why some of the reasons why the students, some of the problems that the teachers are facing this kind of situation is the incorrect syllabus, in teaching. So they don't know if the syllabus that they are teaching is still correct or incorrect. And then limited time for teaching. Of course, there's a lot of reasons why is it that we have this kind of stuff, especially if you are in dual education school. For example, if your school have dual curriculum. For example, if you are, for example, in our school, in Wisdom Islamic School, we have this Islamic and Arabic language curriculum. At the same time, the curriculum given by the Department of Education in our country, which is the K-12 program. So basically, for you to be able to, have or to offer all these subject matters to your students, you need to divide the time properly. So basically, instead of giving 80 minutes for English language, you will just give them, let's say, 50 minutes, because you're going to divide those number of minutes to other subject matters that the students should take. And then language barrier. For example, if you already, experience teaching, and how can I say? If you experience already teaching English outside your country, for example, you will, really experience this language barrier. So these are some of the glitches that we are actually facing. And then students' passiveness. As you know that today is the era of technology, mobile age. For example, students are really not into a type of traditional learning, type of traditional type of teaching and learning process. So sometimes the students have this kind of mentality, being passive. Whatever the teachers feed them, they will just take it, something like that. And then the students are bored and not interested into learning. This is very common. And then classroom management. If you're going to see all the glitches faced by teachers in teaching language, all of these are actually into pedagogy, into curriculum and school management system. So basically, all these contain or inclusive in the basic concept in teaching. So we have the teaching approach, we have the teaching method, techniques, and strategy. So basically, these are the straightforward strategic answer to our problems that I already told you earlier, the glitches faced by the teachers in teaching language. And these are the proper lesson that I want to remind everyone. That's why I told you earlier that this is not a new topic that we are going to explain, but something that to review, okay, to make our knowledge properly arranged, for example, if I may say that one. And then through this humble session, for sure, even though how many years we are in teaching profession, we are still confused of these terminologies. We may find different theories and ideas, but for this presentation, I want to emphasize the differences and basic understanding of the following pedagogical terminologies. But before that, we need to know the definition of teaching first. So earlier, I told you about the possible answers faced by the teachers in the classroom. So we have the educational competitions, of course. We have using multimedia during lecture, designing good syllabus. We have conversation periods between students and teacher, which I always do that one in my class. Teaching through games, for example, good classroom and timetable management, and motivational session. Usually motivational session is you are doing this one randomly. So as what I've told you earlier, that all these possible answers faced by teachers in the classroom setup, all of these are inclusive to the topic, which is about approaches, methodologies, techniques, and strategies in teaching. So what is teaching? Of course, teaching, there's a lot of meaning of teaching. So according to Othniel Smith, teaching is an arrangement and manipulation of a situation in which gaps or obstruction of an individual through engagement. So an individual learn by engaging, or an individual learning by engaging in a problem solving, and that he or she is motivated to learn by involvement in an unsettled state of affairs for which he has not ready, there's no ready-made response, if I may say, or solution. So basically, to engage and direct your learners in problem solving. That is the one of the meanings of teaching. Another one is adaptive process, from mature to the new one. This is very common, in which, for example, we as teachers, we are teaching our students in elementary, high school, or even college students. So the contacts are to be intimate and designed to advance the education of less mature people to mature people to the less one. Okay, this is the development of the individual through the learning and defined as adaptive process. The last one, according to Othniel Smith, teaching is impartation of knowledge. So it is a character of lecturing. So if we say about character of lecturing, this will go back on how we deliver, on how we impart our lesson or knowledge to the clientele or to the students or learners that we have. So from that, we need to know what is the purpose of teaching, what is behind this word. So basically, what is the objective of teaching, or teaching's objectives, according to Dr. Freeman Williams III. Good objectives in teaching is hitting the target. That is a very practical explanation, of course. If we do not have, or if we do not make definite plans about what we intend to accomplish, we will accomplish little or nothing for all our efforts and time. So to hit the trajectory, to reach the goal, and to accomplish the plan, because without reaching the plan, then there's no point of teaching. So marks the good objectives. Number one, we have brief enough to be remembered. When you are teaching, with all the activities done by the learners, they need enough keywords, for example, to remember. So make it brief. Or for example, if you have this very big definition of something, you just have to take the keywords of that one. You have to formulate the best description for them to be able to remember. Another one is specific enough to be achieved. Okay, so it should be achievable. This is actually part of SMART, if I may say. SMART, specific, measurable, attainable. So achievable, not too much but not too small. And then made in terms of student behavior. This is very important. Make it aligned to their behavior. So there are people who are cultural oriented. There are institutions that are into religious belief, for example. Example in Saudi Arabia, in Brunei Darussalam. Some are secularized also. Okay, they actually separate the religion and the, in terms of their educational affiliation. So some are secularized and some are in the basis of their faith and traditions. So make sure that all these are according to their behavior. Or another thing is, make it sure that it is according to their capacity, their behavior as an individual. That is why we have the term SMART, which is specific. We have measurable, attainable, result-oriented, and what is the time-bounded on teaching. So basically, you have to understand the objective of teachings, which I already, we already emphasized earlier, that it should be brief enough to remember, specific enough to be achieved, and made in terms of student behavior. So basically, you are going to think, for the number 3, you are going to think, what is the behavior of the students? How old are they, for example? So the system of your teaching strategy, or the teaching approach that you have to use must be according to the behavior of your student. So let's go to the lesson proper. So what I've told you, the lesson proper that we are going to have this afternoon. As a teacher, due to many works, of course, especially in the public school, that has been given to us, sometimes these terminologies, that was common for educators became confusing for some reasons. Sometimes because of lack of practice. I believe so. Sometimes lack of understanding. And today we will try the best. Okay, we will try our best to review and explain its differences, to understand it more in order for us to use it properly when the pandemic is over. Even, online, we can still use this one. So basically, the lesson that we're going to emphasize this afternoon is all about the teaching approaches, teaching methodologies, teaching techniques, and teaching strategies. We're going to give the definition of this one, a sort of simple, what do you call this one? Simple example, and then simple description for us to be able to understand these terminologies, pedagogical terminologies. Number one, we have teaching approach. Okay. For teaching approach, when we say approach, that is an act of getting something. That is an act of getting close. Okay? A way or path that we are going to go with. And pedagogy, teaching approach, is a set of principles, a set of beliefs, or ideas about the nature of learning, which is translated into the classroom. Okay? So, meaning to say, something that you think is possible to use to reach your objectives in teaching. And on its example, for example, if we see the monitor, we have here learner-centered approach, where students are actively involved, they became independent with the guidance given by the teacher, and the teacher acts as a facilitator. Basically, this is more on oneself belief. We can say that teaching approach is a way of looking at teaching and learning. This is your personal philosophy in teaching, for example. So that is basically the teaching approach. Now, what do you mean by teaching methods? What is teaching methodology? If you see, it is a systematic way of doing something. It implies an orderly, logical arrangement of steps. It is more procedural. That is very true, as what we've told you earlier, that make it more easy to remember. If we say teaching methods, it is a way of doing something. It implies an orderly, logical arrangement of steps. It is more procedural, in which the teacher chooses the procedure to teach some material so they can learn it in an easy way. For example, investigatory method. We say investigatory method, you have to provide a lot of opportunities for the students to participate in classroom activity. You have to focus greatly on learners' active involvement. If we say investigatory method, it is de-emphasizes the teacher's authoritative role in the classroom, because more of the teachers are very authoritarian. All of the things must come from you, especially for us like 90s kids. Some of the experiences that we experienced before was the teacher is more dominant to the students. For nowadays, we are not doing that one, because we have the teacher learning approach that we already explained earlier. Okay, and then we have experiments in investigation uses scientific methods. So basically, teaching method is more on procedural. So moving on to teaching techniques. What is teaching techniques? As you see in the monitor, we have here also, techniques is a well-designed procedure, okay, to use for an activity. These are such steps we follow when we teach. This is the teacher's style or trick to accomplish an immediate objective. This is more into applications or implementational. One of its examples is research, study, and pair work. So now let's have, of course, we're going to wrap up this one later on. So if we're going to see the difference of methodologies and techniques, the keyword for this one, if we talk about teaching methods, this is more procedural. Okay. If we talk about teaching techniques, this is more into applications or implementational. Okay, moving on. That's why here, let's go back first. We have here the research, for example. We're going to give you some further explanation about the research. Of course, research is a very big topic that we can, this time 40 minutes is not actually enough for us to talk about that one. But basically, one of the techniques that we can use for teaching technique is the research. And then the last but not the least is teaching strategy. If we talk about teaching strategy, as you see in the monitor, it is a plan that ensures the efficiency of learning. These are the methods of approaching the problem or task. So modes of operation for achieving a particular end or plan designed for controlling and manipulating certain information, and of its examples are think, pair, and share. I want to say is that it is a plan that ensures the efficiency of learning. These are the methods of approaching a problem or task. Modes of operation for achieving a particular end or plan designed for controlling and manipulating certain information, and of which example are think, pair, and share, or small group discussion. So therefore, we have to remember that our teaching strategy is identified through our teaching approach, through our teaching methods, methods used, and techniques. So basically, teaching learning process, we have this common concepts to understand. We have teaching approach, as you see in the monitor, a set of principles, belief, or ideas about the nature of learning which is translated into the classroom. It's your belief, personal belief as a teacher. And then a teaching methodology. Okay, from approach, from your personal philosophy in teaching, you have here the methodology, which is more on procedural. It's a way of doing something. It implies an orderly or logical arrangement of steps. It's more on procedural, as what I've said. And then the techniques, which is more on applications or implementational. It is such steps we follow when we teach, because it's more in implementation and application. It is the teacher's style or trick to accomplish an immediate objective. We have also the teaching strategies. Strategies are methods of approaching a problem or task of operation for achieving a particular end or plan designed for controlling and manipulating certain information. If we talk about the difference of teaching techniques teaching techniques and strategy, because it's already cleared for us the difference of methods and techniques. Methods, as what I've said, is more procedural. Techniques is more into implementational or application. So the difference of techniques and strategy. Techniques is strategy is the methods we use, in order to facilitate our students' learning. So it's more on creativity. Now I'm going to give you some example. Okay. But before that one, I just want to emphasize that the following teaching concepts. Okay, for example, the teaching approach, teaching method, teaching techniques, and strategy. The following teaching concepts are for example, our approach relies on someone's belief. Methods will be more on procedural, where it will give you the step-by-step process. Okay, and then techniques will be more on application or implementational, while strategy is more on the methods we use in order to facilitate our students' learning. So, if we are still confused of this one, we can actually go back that one later on. So, for example, we have this one. The example of approach, methods, techniques, and strategy. As what I've told you earlier, that the procedure in teaching, for example, whatever strategy that you are doing, it should be aligned from your technique, methods, and approach. For example, in our approach that we thought of this learner-centered approach, of course, there's a lot of method for that one. What kind of procedural method or what kind of procedural things that we can actually do? If we have a learner-centered approach, I can use investigatory as what I've given you earlier. And then, the technique that I'm going to do is research, study, or pair work. And then for the strategy, I can give think, pair, share, or small group discussion. So basically, if you see this example, all of these, like terminologies and concepts are in line with each other. You cannot make a strategy which is not in line with your technique. So another one, if you are teacher-centered, for example, if you are, like doing the old type of teaching, so maybe the methods that you're using is lecture, which is very common. And then the technique can be symposium, it can be talks. For example, now I'm just talking. And then the strategy that you're using is the whole class discussion and whole class presentation, and so on and so forth. If you see the approaches, for example, the constructivist approach, that's one's view, or a teacher's view, for example, in teaching. And then the method that the teachers will do is activity, and then the technique that the teacher will do is role play or dramatization. I actually did this one when I was in Indonesia. Until now, I'm actually doing this one. You can give, for example, a script to your students to memorize or to familiarize, and then they're going to dramatize or role play that one during your class. And then the strategy for you to be able, or for them to be able to do that one, is think, pair, and circle, or peer evaluation. Meaning to say, if you're because if we talk about constructivism, constructivism is more on students build up. You're going to build up the prior knowledge of your students. You are basing on their prior knowledge. You're building up the prior knowledge of your students. So basically, the method that you are going to think is activity. What kind of activity? What kind of technique? It can be a role play. So before they can do the role play, the strategy that they're going to do is think, pair, and circle. So you're going to group them, you're going to peer them, for example, and then make them understand and give them the guidelines for them to be able to do the techniques, which is the role play that you are going to implement. And then the last but not the least that I'm going to give the example is the MLE, or multilingual education. So multilingual education is a mother tongue base. Okay, it uses more than one language. For example, if you are outside your country, you have to use English, the language of the native students, for example, and your own if you can actually use that one in some way, for example. What kind of methods you're going to use? It can be direct or indirect. It's a teacher-centered, students will observe. Mean to say, it is a teacher-centered, and then the students will observe. That is the direct and indirect, what do you call this one? Indirect method. So what techniques that you're going to use? Of course, it can be talks, or it can be symposium, for example. So the strategy that you're going to do, for example, the plan, design, and controlling certain information is the whole class discussion. It can be whole class presentation, or think, pair, and share. So basically, as what I've told you, the strategy should be aligned to your technique. The technique should be aligned to your methodology, and your methodology should be aligned to your approach. And I have to remind you that there is no single best approach, methods, techniques, and strategy that applies to all. Of course, we don't have stuff or things like that. This will depend on your philosophy, your belief and capacity of your students, for example, and nature of the subject matter. Because there are some techniques, there are some approaches that is maybe applicable to these people, okay, or this is not, or but this is not applicable to other people or other group of students. So basically, you have to see, it will depend on the philosophy, the environment, the culture of the people. Of course, these are the things that you are going to consider before doing the what we call this one, the teaching strategies or teaching approach that you are implementing in your class. Okay, so therefore, if we aim to be an excellent, remember that excellence is a character, it is not an ability. So basically, the skills is the unified force of experience, intellect, and passion in their operation. So you have to remember that if you want to be an excellent, language teacher, you have to characterize these attributes. For example, you have to do your task well, you have to read, you have to make sure that what you are doing inside the class is basically aligned with the culture, aligned with the pedagogical procedure, for them to be able to grasp the knowledge that you are actually giving them. So basically, from this kind of information, you must have a self-assurance, because self-assurance reassures others. This is very true. According to the studies, self-assurance is 2/3 of success. So to learn and gain self-assurance is to reassure others. So basically, we are teaching, we are learning these very common pedagogical concepts, not because we don't know it, but we are reminding ourselves again and reviewing these concepts for us to be able to have a self-assurance, for us to reassure our learners. So from that, thank you very much for listening, and this has been Sap. You can call me Sap or Saprolla Rollie C Deporos from the Philippines, studying in Indonesia. Thank you so much, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. If you have some question, you can raise your question right now. Let me drink first my water. Please be reminded, while we are waiting for the questions of our like friends out there, this session is more on like a review to everyone. Maybe you can find some theories or some ideas, the differences, or how can I say, maybe they're saying that the strategy comes first before the technique. Actually, it doesn't matter. Okay, for example, like, of course, as what I've told you, for example, your approach is constructivist, and then your activity is, your method is activity methods. And then it can be the strategy, of course, the peer evaluation or think, pair, and circle. And then the technique that you're going to do is role play and or dramatization. It doesn't matter. And sometimes also, this strategy can be manipulated. You can actually change this one while you are in the process of while you are in the process of teaching, because sometimes there are some circumstances that is happening inside your class which is unintentional. So from that perspective, for example, you have to have this quick mind for you to be able to change the strategy that you are going to emphasize or you are going to implement inside the classroom. There is one question here asked. Let me read first the question. Here's the question. The question is, what's the question? The question is this one. The question is, how do you do, let me read first properly so that the question will be more comprehensible. The question asked is, even me, I actually don't understand the question. Maybe the question that he wants to emphasize that how do you able to catch up? How do you able to teach in Indonesia where you have this kind of language barrier? So as what I told you earlier, that when we are teaching, as long as we know, for example, the pedagogical concept, the teaching concept, I think we don't have any problem with that one. For as long as you know the process, for as long as you understand the capacity of your students, for example, you can actually make a very simple approach and a very simple methods, techniques, and strategy that is aligned, to their culture and their capacity as a students. I think you don't have any problem. Practically speaking, what I'm doing in Indonesia as a English speaking coach or English speaking class that I'm doing, what I'm doing is like I am explaining them, using English language in a very simple way. I'll make sure that the terminologies that we are using in front of them is comprehensive, very understandable, and then you have to mix a little bit of their own language, which is Bahasa Indonesia. So basically, you are going to have this MLE approach, which is you are not just using one language, but you are using several languages for them, or for you to be able to deliver the materials or the subject matter that, or the lessons that you are going to emphasize. So I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that these things, for example, can give you, like can enlighten you, for example, because these pedagogical or teaching concepts are very, very important. We have to remember again that teaching approach is more on your philosophy, and then methodology is more on procedural. Your techniques, for example, is more on implementational or application, and then strategy is the methods we use in order to facilitate our students' learning. It's more on creativity. So thank you so much for that. If you have some question, you can actually raise that one through our YouTube channel that will be posted by our what you call this one, our organizer. Thank you so much, IPGKBA, for inviting me, and thank you so much also for Wisdom Islamic School for giving me the opportunity to emphasize or to give some little knowledge of mine, even though we are still in the process of learning. Of course, we cannot give you all the details that you need for this particular subject or for this particular topic, which is empowering language teacher through teaching and learning, because 40 minutes or 1 hour is not enough. But I hope that in the future, we still have this kind of very educational conferences, even though it's through online or via online. It's not a hindrance for us to learn and for us to be able to meet again one day in flesh. So from that, this has been Sam from the Philippines, teaching in Wisdom Islamic School, studying in Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, or the Education University in Indonesia, a licensed professional teacher, a PhD candidate. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Saprolla Deporos, for the sharing and also answering the question. So if I were to conclude from this session, Mr. Deporos argues that teaching requires teachers' personal practical knowledge. Each strategist planned and executed in the classroom was based on the teacher's personal practical theory. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this webinar. We're not going to take questions anymore as this session is recorded. And all I can say is thank you so much for your participation, for your comments, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed this session. I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Deporos, the studio director, Sheikh Sharul Azhar Ali, the producer of EduWeb TV, Dr. Suras Kanagasabai, the Educational Technology Division, Ministry of Education Malaysia, and also the webinar rapporteurs. Jumpa lagi, see you again, and goodbye from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you.